July 23rd, 2018. On an ordinary roadside near Reading, a single spark from a broken rim lands on bone-dry brush. Within hours, a typical wildfire spirals into something scientists thought impossible. A blaze so powerful it creates its own thunderstorm and unleashes a tornado of fire. What allowed a simple mechanical failure to trigger a catastrophe that forced experts to rewrite the science of wildfires? The answer begins with conditions more explosive than anyone imagined. Travel trailer rumbled along Highway 299 west of Reading on the afternoon of July 23, 2018. As the vehicle rolled through the foothills, a tire failed. The exposed rim scraped against the asphalt, sending a shower of sparks into the weeds at the roadside. In most years, those sparks might have fizzled harmlessly. But after years of drought, followed by a warm, dry winter and a punishing July heatwave, the landscape was primed for disaster. Grass and brush along the highway had dried to a crisp, their moisture content driven to critical lows by relentless sun and a string of triple-digit days. Nearby weather stations reported afternoon temperatures around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity dropping into the teens. Fire scientists later described the fuel as exceptionally dry, conditions that make even a small ignition source dangerous. Ground cover in this part of Shasta County had become a bed of kindling. Years of drought had left both live and dead vegetation stressed and brittle, while a wet season months earlier had encouraged thick growth, now cured and ready to burn. The region's steep canyons and rugged terrain helped trap heat, amplifying the drying effect. By late July, the area west of Reading was experiencing some of the most hazardous fire weather in memory. When the sparks landed, they found no resistance, only grass and brush, with barely enough moisture left to slow combustion. Flames took hold almost instantly, racing through the parched fuel. In that moment, a simple mechanical failure set off a chain reaction, igniting a fire that would soon defy all expectations of what a wildfire could become. Winds funneled down the steep canyons west of Reading, gathering speed as the Carr Fire advanced. By the afternoon of July 26th, gusts reached 25 miles per hour, driving walls of flame across the landscape faster than anyone could track. The fire line surged from 20,000 acres to more than 44,000 acres in a single day. In minutes, the blaze leapt from wildland into the edge of the city. The neighborhoods of Keswick and Lake Reading estates found themselves directly in the path. Flames jumped backyard fences, consuming homes and power lines in a matter of moments. Fire crews stationed along the urban fringe reported smoke so thick that headlights barely cut through it. A Reading fire crew chief later described the scene as chaos. Wind roaring through the canyons, embers blasting sideways, and the sky turning an unnatural shade of orange. Evacuation orders struggled to keep pace with the fire's speed. Residents fled along gridlocked streets, some watching as their houses vanished in the rearview mirror. The wind corridor, shaped by the Sacramento River and surrounding hills, acted like a bellows, feeding the fire's advance and making traditional containment lines meaningless. Within hours, entire blocks were reduced to ash, and the city's defenses were overrun. The Carr Fire was no longer just a wildfire in the hills, it had become a direct urban threat, driven by forces that outmatched every plan in place. A column of smoke and superheated air surged upward from the burning hills west of Reading, gathering force with every acre consumed. As the Carr Fire intensified on the evening of July 26th, the plume shot skyward, punching through layers of the atmosphere. Within minutes, the top of this fire-driven column rose to nearly 35,000 feet, higher than most commercial jets. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service watched in disbelief as radar returns painted a picture usually reserved for severe thunderstorms, not wildfires. The heat of the fire created a powerful updraft, drawing in air and moisture from below and lofting ash, embers, and vapor high above the ground. As the plume cooled at altitude, water vapor condensed on particles of smoke and ash, forming a dense, roiling pyrocumulonimbus cloud, a thunderstorm born from fire itself. Inside the cloud, ice crystals and turbulent mixing created intense electrical fields. Lightning flickered within the smoke, and at least 3 new fires ignited miles away, sparked by bolts from the storm the fire had built. Incident meteorologists described the event as breathtaking and unsettling. A wildfire not just fueling its own destruction on the ground, but now shaping the weather above, blurring the line between earthbound disaster and atmospheric phenomenon. A wall of flame twisted itself into a monstrous vortex on the edge of Reading as dusk settled on July 26. The column widened to nearly 300 meters, churning with wind speeds that topped 140 miles per hour, violent enough to rival a tornado. Trees snapped and splintered, their bark stripped clean. A steel transmission tower crumpled into a tangled heap. Firefighters racing along Buenaventura Boulevard found themselves staring down a swirling inferno, debris whipping through the air with the force of a freight train. One pickup truck was picked up and hurled across a yard. Houses lost roofs and walls to the wind before flames even touched them. In the chaos, some crews had no choice but to deploy fire shelters. Thin layers of foil and fiberglass meant as a last resort, never designed for this kind of onslaught. The air itself was searing, glass shattering inward as pressure waves tore through cab windows. Radio calls crackled with urgency, voices straining to be heard over the roar. A Reading crew chief later recalled, "It was like nothing we'd ever seen, wind and fire coming from every direction. There was nowhere safe to go." For nearly half an hour, the vortex carved a path of destruction, a force so extreme that no training or tactic could withstand it. By the time the Carr Fire was finally contained, the scale of destruction was staggering. Flames had swept across 229,651 acres, an area larger than the city of Chicago, leaving behind a landscape of blackened earth and twisted remains. More than 1,600 structures were reduced to rubble, including houses, schools, businesses, and critical infrastructure. The neighborhoods of Lake Reading Estates and Keswick were nearly erased from the map, their streets lined with little more than chimneys and warped metal. For thousands of families, the fire meant the loss of everything: photo albums, heirlooms, the familiar comfort of home, gone in a matter of minutes. 8 people lost their lives, among them 3 firefighters who died trying to protect others. The names of those lost became part of the region's memory, a reminder of how quickly disaster can turn ordinary days into tragedy. In the aftermath, entire communities faced the long road of recovery, sorting through ashes, filing insurance claims, and searching for places to stay. For many, the trauma lingered far beyond the last ember, reshaping lives and neighborhoods in ways that statistics alone could never capture. California's summers have grown hotter by more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the early 20th century. Alongside that rise, the air's capacity to draw moisture from vegetation, measured as vapor pressure deficit, has increased by about 15%. These numbers help explain why the Carr Fire became so explosive. Drought, heat, and a thirstier atmosphere primed the landscape for disaster. Fire scientists now track these trends as warning signs, not just weather anomalies. The Carr Fire's pyrocumulonimbus cloud, once thought to be a rare phenomenon, is now studied as a symptom of a changing climate, one that makes extreme fires more likely. In the years after the Carr Fire, researchers used advanced climate models to simulate fire-driven thunderstorms over North America. While these models did not recreate the Carr Fire itself, they successfully captured the towering cloud heights and persistent smoke plumes seen in other recent megafires. These breakthroughs allow scientists to better predict when and where fire-generated storms might occur, and how their smoke will travel across continents. Fire agencies responded too. Carr Fire and national partners revised training to emphasize plume-dominated fires and the dangers of sudden wind shifts. Meteorologists now work more closely with command teams, using real-time radar and satellite data to warn crews about developing fire weather. The Carr Fire became a case study, evidence that wildfires must be treated as coupled systems, where atmosphere and flame can interact in ways that challenge even the best laid plans. Extreme fires now write their own rules. As droughts lengthen and heat records fall, wildfire seasons grow longer and more unpredictable. The next storm may not wait decades. Understanding these forces isn't just science, it's survival. What does our future look like if fire keeps rewriting the atmosphere?